name is Matt Owens. Welcome back to another transmission from a Cult of Misfits. If you're into things like existential dread and interdimensional beings and the state of consciousness and the nature of reality, all the fun stuff, well, so am I. These are the things that I enjoy talking about on my podcast. So if you enjoy these things as well, I strongly and firmly, not too firmly, guys, I don't want to be pushy, but I seriously insist that you follow my podcast, A Cult of Misfits. You can also find me on Instagram. I post new content over there regularly. Yes, I said it that way on purpose, guys, okay? Regularly. Just go with it. Post a lot of pictures from my nature walks, my afternoon walks, where I connect with the all that is. Let Cheech, my sweet, sweet dog, chase squirrels. So check out my podcast. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, all the places, guys. Like if you're wondering, oh, I wonder if he's there. Yes, I am, except for Facebook. Sorry. Not on Facebook. Sorry to break your heart, but I'm basically in all the other places. Check me out on Instagram, Twitter, all of the above. Today, I want to talk about a little Buddhism. I want to dive deep. The meat and potatoes of this thing is going to be about the Four Noble Truths. So we're going to talk about suffering, the nature of, living in this 3D realm. Talk about Nirvana, how to get there according to the Buddha. But first, I want to talk about the tallest building. Nope, let's try that again. The tallest statue in the world. And I want to talk about a little analogy that came to me from the divine realms. Praise be. A little analogy about Chi-Chi chasing some rabbits that I think is going to resonate. So first of all, I was playing a little trivia game recently, and the question was, what is the tallest statue in the world? And I'm a big fan of trivia, guys. Love a good pub trivia. Big fan. If you think like, should I invite Matt to do trivia sometime? Yes, the answer is yes. Please invite me. I would like to be on your team. So the tallest statue, I was like, oh, well, I think that's well, what do you think it is, first of all, before I give it away? Like, no spoilers here, but my answer was the Jesus statue in Rio de Janeiro, right? The big statue of Jesus with his outstretched arms, right? I thought like, I'm pretty sure that's the biggest statue. So we went with that, and that was definitely not the correct answer. So I was like, well, we looked it up and we were like, well, what the heck is the correct answer? And we were all shocked. We were playing with kids and adults. And so all of the adults were like, wait, what? First of all, I highly suggest you Google it and look at it for yourself. The tallest statue in the world is one that none of us had ever heard of, which really surprised me because you would think that the tallest statue in the world would be just sort of common knowledge, but nope, never heard of it. And when you look it up, it's you just kind of laugh because you're like, holy shit, that is a really, really large statue. It's actually, if you can picture it in your head, it's twice as tall as the Statue of Liberty, which is 300 feet. And this behemoth is 600 feet. Now here's the deal. We're going to talk about this for a minute, guys, because I dove deep on the Wikipedia. I was asking the Chat GPT. I had a lot of questions about statues. All of a sudden, I started going down going down a rabbit hole. This is why I love trivia, because I just go down these rabbit holes and then I discover new things about the world. Where I'm like, how did I not know this before? Okay, so buckle up. We're gonna have a little gnosis today, guys. The tallest statue is in India. Okay. That surprised me too. I was like, okay, well, whatever. I don't know why it surprised me, but it did. Okay. And it's of one of their founding fathers whose name I don't remember. Um, One of their founding fathers, and he looks kind of modern too, which is surprising because I expected it to be like this beautiful, like, ancient looking statue or something that was kind of, Greco-Roman or whatever, right? But nope, it was just like a normal looking Indian guy, 600 feet tall. So So I look into it, and that's kind of a thing. So I started looking at all these other statues. Then I start digging into like, where are all of these others? I asked ChatGPT what the 20 tallest statues in the world were. And here's what else surprised me is I didn't recognize like any of them. And I'm like, how are these not common knowledge? And here's another weird fun fact is that 95% of them are in Asia, which is like, wow, this is really insane. So clearly I've never traveled to Asia, or maybe it would be common knowledge, I suppose, but um just a little fun facts for you guys. So next time you're playing pub trivia, whether or not you invite me, no pressure guys, but like come on. I'm free. I'm down. Uh, when it comes down to the statue categories, I'm going to kick ass now. That's all I'm saying. Let's move on, guys. Today I was on a walk, and a lot of times I get these little analogies. They remind me of little Jesus parables, right? Just little things that I can relate to. My little human mind can wrap itself around and try to understand these, cosmic, this cosmic wisdom that, like, I don't think we're meant to get most of it, but these parables kind of help to break it down. These analogies. So anyway, today on the walk, Cheech just goes nuts. He's a long-haired Chihuahua, guys. In case you've never seen him, I posted on my Instagram. If I can lure you over there with pictures of sweet Chi-Chi. Um, but anyway, he goes bananas for the rabbits. He's never caught one in his life because his sweet little legs just don't go fast enough. Sorry, buddy. He's here. He can hear what I'm saying, and I don't mean to. I still love you. Okay, I won't judge you. But today he was like chomping at the bit to chase this rabbit because he could smell it. So he's got his nose down to the ground and he's just like furiously his nose is sweeping the area looking for this Bugs Bunny, right? And so the thing is I this often happens is he can't see the rabbit. He just knows it's nearby somewhere in these, briars, these blackberry bushes. Um, I always like calling them briars because it makes me feel like like I live at Downton Abbey or something. I feel like British people call them briars, and I feel fancy when I say it. If I say blackberry bushes, I feel like a hick, like some redneck, like, oh, blackberry bushes. No, that's trashy. But briars, that's where cute little rabbits live. And that's that's a part of a children's story, right? Like that's precious. Blackberry bushes, I could do without those. But anyway, so oftentimes he can smell the stupid rabbit, but I can see it and he can't see it because I just realized today that it's because he's colorblind and the stupid rabbit is camouflaged for a reason. But my predatory eyes could detect the rabbit. And I could see it sitting like, 3 feet away from Chi Chi, just like not moving a muscle, just, not wanting Chi Chi to attack him viciously. Um, but it was just sort of a parable in my own life because oftentimes there are these things that we have this knowing, this gut instinct that like I just know something's around the corner. I can just feel it. I can't see it with my human eyes, but I just fucking know it's there. I can't explain it, but like there's like I can just feel it, right? I feel like that's what Chi Chi often does is he can sniff it. He knows that it's real close by. He just can't fucking see it yet. And it sort of translates over into manifestation, these things that we want in our lives, where you're like, I can feel it in my bones. Something's right around the corner here. Um, and you're just sniffing around, right? And I feel like there are these things in our lives that are often, as I've taken this journey, this inward journey, right, towards, expanding consciousness or whatever these hoity-toity hippie words are, right? Well, whatever it means to you, but just exploring consciousness and stuff like that. I found that this ancient wisdom um, that you find globally, right? That they all kind of talk about the same stuff. Um, it just blows my mind that it's just been there in plain sight the whole time, right? Like these nuggets of wisdom, these little like hacks into life, into reality about these ascended masters saying, "Hey, here's where we headed, and it had these results. Like we're literally spelling out for you how to ascend, right?" And oftentimes I read these ancient manuscripts, or like today we're going to talk about the Four Noble Truths. I'm looking at the Four Noble Truths today, looking into them, and I just was laughing to myself because I'm like, how have I never seen this before, right? But past versions of myself, like if 5 years ago, if you had started talking to me about the Four Noble Truths, like it would have gone over my head, right? Not intellectually, like I would have been interested, like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, that's interesting, cool, that's a neat philosophy. But it wouldn't have gone beyond that. I wouldn't have applied it to my thought to apply it to my life. I wouldn't have dissected it. I wouldn't have seen it in the way that I see it now, right? And so when I say having the eyes to see, which is, what I think it comes from the Bible, but actually, now that I'm saying it, might come from the Emerald Tablets. But anyway, wherever it comes from, it doesn't matter. It didn't come from me. Having the eyes to see things metaphorically is the same as, um, just seeing things from a different level. Like me seeing the rabbit, and Cheech hasn't had the scales taken from his eyes yet, metaphorically speaking, right? Like he can only see in the bandwidth of visible light that he can see in, right? But then you reach a different perspective, like, and you have a human visual spectrum, and you're like, holy shit, I can see way, way more. And on another fun little side note, guys, we're we're doing trivia today. There's a thing called a mantis shrimp that lives in the ocean. It's a fascinating creature. If you're interested in such things, go on Wikipedia and check it out. I'm just shooting from the hip here, and I don't remember all the fun facts about it, but like it's the craziest fucking animal you'll ever see. It's got these bonkers eyeballs. They can see colors of the spectrum that the human eye can't pick up. It like can clap its claws together, and it shoots like a bullet of hot air towards its prey and immobilizes its prey. It can like sense things in the spectrum. It's got like all of these superpowers basically, right? That it's like, how does this thing exist? Like how does nobody know about this? And like I want to see more of the spectrum, like, right? Like how come we can't tap into mantis shrimp technology? But I'm sure the military already is. Like, what am I talking about? But having the eyes to see, having shrimp eyes is what I'm getting at here, guys. Right? Spiritual shrimp eyes. It's so funny to me because like you can either see it or you can't, right? And I don't think that's why I'm not a fan. I no longer feel the need to plant seeds in people, because like they're either going to see it or they're not, right? I can't force an agenda, or I can't say, hey, how come you can't see these colors that I can see that you can't see, right? You just can't explain that to somebody. The mantis shrimp is like, yo, bro, I can see a lot of shit that you can't see. And I'm like, well, tell me about it. And they're like, well, you won't even understand it because like you can't see it. So like it's literally like, have a good day. And then the shrimp like shoots me with its hot bubble, and we have a whole argument. That's a whole thing. But um I got stories, guys. I got stories. And so with the Four Noble Truths, it's like it's been there the whole time, right? The ancient wisdom, these schools of this esoteric knowledge, this gnosis that these secret societies sort of whisper and talk about, is these sorts of things, right? That are now less. Done in caves, and it's sort of on the internet in plain sight to see, but you can't see it till you see it. And so that's how it was with the Four Noble Truths. I feel like I took an Eastern philosophies class in college, and it just didn't soak in. And now I did a deep dive into it today, and I'm like, oh wow, it just means so much more now that I have a different perspective, right? Um, so let's dive into this thing. Let's talk about the Four Noble Truths. As I just kind of, the way my brain works is I want a brief overview of it. I just want to sort of get a broad stroke of what's going on here, and then I like to sort of break it down into baby bites that I can comprehend, and then I kind of look at the whole picture, the whole puzzle when I'm done, and put it together from a bird's eye view. And I'm like, okay, now I see all the parts and pieces of this thing. I wrapped my mind around it. I've talked my way through it. So you're going to follow me on that trip today if you're interested. Um, so it was the Four Noble Truths were written by Buddha. Buddha means the one who awoke. Didn't know that till today. Um, you know what else I didn't realize is that he's Indian. Like I don't know why in my brain I always thought that Buddha was like Chinese or something. Like not in the Asian subcontinent, but like I don't know why I picture that. Like I just picture the statues, and I never thought like, oh, he's Indian. Like so that was also surprising to me, and it may be surprising to you too. I don't like using the word truths as we're talking about Four Noble Truths. I've sort of shied away in recent years as I analyze everything that comes out of my mouth now. I don't like stating that this is a truth because I believe that that's all subjective, right? We start talking about things like good and evil and seeing things in that very dualistic way. And then it turns into, I'm right and you're wrong. This is the truth. That's not the truth. You're a liar. You're wrong. I'm right. And it starts turning into, an ego fest, right? Like, you're the sinners. I'm, the saint over here. So I don't like saying these are the truths because they're just a perspective, right? They may resonate with you. They may not. I don't say like this is the way. Well, I actually do say that to myself. I'm like, this is the way because it's the way for me. But I never like to say like, hey, this is how you guys should be living your life. You should be copying me or you're doing it wrong because our ego, the voice in our head, which I call Hal, as many of you know, Hal's always trying to play those games with me, right? Of trying to get me into a place of duality, of like I'm better than them, they're wrong, morality, sin, superiority, all that stuff. I have been stepping away from that in the last few years and just atrophying that part of myself because, well, I talk about it at length in another podcast, but so rather than calling it truths, Four Noble Truths, I watched a video today that suggested that it could be considered like laws, right? For just sort of laws of the universe. Like this is just kind of how things work around here, right? Rather than saying this is the right path or the wrong path, it's just saying like, hey, this is how I've noticed the mechanisms of the all that is are kind of working here in this material 3D realm, right? So I'm going to briefly say what the Four Noble Truths are, and then I'm going to break them down for you. So the first noble truth quickly is basically a recognition, an acknowledgement that life in the material realm is going to include a lot of suffering. Sorry to tell you. I hate to break the bad news, but like there is no good or bad, and you're going to be suffering a lot while you're here. Just a heads up. So that's the first truth. It's just recognizing, like, hey, there's suffering here. Okay. The second noble truth dives into the causes or the origin of this suffering, where it comes from. The third noble truth is, hey, there's good news. It's possible to stop suffering. And then the fourth noble truth talks about the path to end the suffering. Like, how are we going to do this? Okay. So we'll start with the first one, which is just saying, hey, y'all are going to deal with a lot of suffering while you're there. Okay. It reminded me of this conversation. I was having a philosophical, deep conversation with somebody that I enjoy having these conversations with, these types of conversations. And they were saying that from their perspective, life is just suffering. Life is just an endless string of suffering. Occasionally, here and there, there's moments of happiness and joy and celebration, but then there's just going to be a lot more suffering again. And then another breath of fresh air for a minute, and then like just a lot more suffering. And I was in my head, I'm hearing that, and I'm like, that sounds real pessimistic. That sounds real negative. Like, um, I was like, I do not agree with that viewpoint at all. And I love having these conversations because I love hearing other people's perspectives, and I love sharing my perspective when when asked for, right? But I I really that stuck with me, that conversation that I had with that person. because I thought, like, is there truth to that? I always kind of ponder, is there truth to it? And now, as I'm looking at these four noble truths, it says, like, oh, yep, oh, yeah, that's a big confirmation, a big thumbs up. Yep, a lot of suffering. Um, and so I thought, like, well, okay, that is true, because I mean, I do believe that we are divine beings, and that on the other side, whatever that may mean, in the various dimensions and realms and what have you, it would appear the evidence points to there being no suffering on the other side. And so this would appear to be a place that has suffering built in as a part of the mechanism, right? That it's purposeful, that it serves a grander purpose, right? Divine purpose, if you will. And so it's this feeling when you say, I always like to I always like to expand upon words, and I want as many synonyms as I can, right? As I dive into these ancient texts and translations, it obviously gets muddled in time, right? A lot gets lost in translation, a lot. I don't think most people realize. I listen to a lot of, like, linguists and translators on podcasts. Like, I just want to know this how this stuff works. Zechariah Sitchin, stuff like that. Like what are these guys talking about? What, that sort of thing. And so um I like to I just like to dive deep. I lost my train of thought there. So yep, it's gone. So what it talks about is basically that there's going to be a lot of disappointment, a lot of frustration, a lot of discomfort, a lot of unpleasantness, and a lot of dissatisfaction. Um there's a lot of talk about how once we realize these truths, we start to wake up, right? That until we start to realize these truths about suffering and how to release ourselves from the suffering, that we will just continue to be unconscious. We'll continue to be zombies, right? Just sort of bumbling around through this matrix or whatever. Um, Repeating these cycles of greed and hatred and guilt and jealousy and pride and just all the difficult stuff, right? And until we start to realize that we're stuck in this pattern, then we're just kind of bumbling around like zombies. Okay, so that brings us to the second noble truth, which talks about the cause or the origins of this suffering. Like, okay, great, there's suffering, we know it's here. What's going on here? Where is it coming from? What's causing all of this suffering in my life? And this is the process that I had to do in my own life too. See, as I was reading the Four Noble Truths, I kind of breezed through it quickly, and I was like, oh, yep, this all makes sense. I've heard this before. And I've heard this before because when you start diving into the ancient texts, from just pick a place, all the places, right? They all sort of talk about the same stuff. They all have different names for it, or it's kind of a little bit different here or there, but that's to be expected. But they're all basically saying the same stuff, right? They all kind of talk about how we're trapped here, how there's this endless cycle that we are on, and they all talk about there's a way to get off of it, and they all describe exactly how to get off of it, right? Like, it's real simple, and again, it's like it's right in plain sight. They're all saying the same story. So the cause of suffering, I think that the Sanskrit word, I think the original language translates to a thirst. The cause of suffering is thirst, craving, addiction, attachment. That's what I was going to say. It just came back to me, and I want to talk about it because I like expanding upon these words, because you see these translations, and oftentimes there's controversial translations, right? People latch on to these things that are written in the Bible, and they take it just as it was written, but it's been translated and retranslated and retranslated and muddled, and oftentimes they take it verbatim, and they don't realize that there's a richer meaning to these words, that they can have several meanings, that it doesn't necessarily mean this or that, right? That's why I always like to look into the origins of words. Like, I looked into, what does Lucifer mean? Does it mean, evil devil? No, it means bearer of light. Like, oh, that's interesting, right? Where do these words come from? What are some other synonyms that can kind of like give me a broader picture of like what we're talking about here? That's why when I'm talking in these transmissions, I often say like, God, universe, the all that is. I kind of just say all these different versions because I just feel like it needs to click in one way or the other. Like you may say universe, I may say God, she may say higher self. I call it the Omega. Um, I just like to. I just that's how I like to talk. It's how my brain works. So, so the cause and the origin of this suffering is thirst. All of our cravings, our heart's desires, addictions, attachments to things. And when I talk about suffering, I'm not just talking about like physical suffering, because that's definitely a component, right? Welcome to humanity. But it's these deeper, like emotional suffering, right? Like spiritual, mental, like suffering that's going on inside of my mind, right? And then also in the Buddhist text, they talk about um, suffering being caused by ignorance. And I found that very interesting, and I didn't fully understand what that meant. So I dove deeper, like we're about to. But it's very interesting that a lot of the ancient wisdom, like the ancient Gnostics, for instance, gnosis, the core of that word means knowledge. And their whole game was just trying to gain as much freaking knowledge about the cosmos and the way things work in this reality as they could. And they believed, as many of the ancient cultures just believed, that this was the way to break the endless cycle that we found ourselves on, samsara or the wheel of time or whatever. And so ignorance is having a lack of understanding about the true nature of reality, which is going to lead you to ultimate suffering. So, a lack of understanding about the true nature of reality. For example, it's saying that everything is all connected and that, hey, this is all just a big illusion. And once you realize that, the nature of what's actually going on here, then you can start this process. You can now start heading down this road of getting off of the wheel, of breaking this pattern that we've been on for ages, perhaps, probably. Time is an illusion. And so this ignorance is because people are perceiving the world inaccurately, according to the Buddhists. And when you perceive the world inaccurately, it can lead to confusion, delusion, and ultimately our good old friend suffering. This ignorance also has to do with these false beliefs that we have about ourselves, right? Belief about who you are or who you aren't, what you represent, your belief systems, right? This idea of separation from the all that is, right? You can't start down this path, according to the Buddhists. You can't start down this path until you start realizing there is no separation. God isn't out there somewhere in the clouds, in heaven, in another dimension, in a place that we can't comprehend with our human minds. It's none of that. And it's all of that, right? To speak in a kung fu way, right? Like, it's all of those things and none of those things. Divinity, divinity, I believe, is pervasive through everything, including us. And in that way, we are literally divinity itself, as we are part of the fabric of the all that is. And so they believe, and I believe, that once you're able to start to wrap your mind around this is what I did in my own life, right? And it's not that if you can't wrap your mind around it, you're an idiot, or you can't figure these, none of that, right? That's Hal talking. Um, but this also mirrors my own journey of realization, of awakening, and it's a constant awakening process. It's not when I first started having these conversations. When I first started the awakening process in 2020, Christmas Eve of the first year of the pandemic, you just start seeing things differently, right? You start asking questions. You start digging a little deeper. You start seeing things with new eyes. You start to see the rabbit in the briar. So the second noble truth talks about this thirst, craving, ignorance. Okay, now we'll move on to the third noble truth. The third noble truth is a breath of fresh air. The third one says, hey, here's the good news. Good news means gospel, by the way. Gospel means good news. Here's the good news. We know that suffering is a real heavy thing we just laid on you there, but the good news is it's possible to stop the suffering, to end suffering in your life. Now, I don't know about you, but my entire adulthood, I had a great deal of suffering. I was very anxious all the time, very stressed out all the time, very angry all the time. I wouldn't have admitted it at the time. But now, in retrospect, as I have a new perspective, as I've metaphorically laid those old versions of myself 6 feet under, right, as I blossom into who I am today, I couldn't have heard those words. So, the good news, according to the Buddhists, the good news is hey, it's possible to end this whole thing, end all this suffering. And the way to do it is by letting go of all of your desires and all of your attachments. So it's super easy. Super easy peasy. All you got to do is just let go of your desires, bro. Just stop wanting everything and stop attaching to everything. And then you can achieve a state of liberation, of freedom, of inner peace, of nirvana, as the Buddhists say. Nirvana is the escape from the wheel. And as I talk about in nearly every transmission, my modus operandi is freedom. It always has been. Even as a kid, I always felt rebellious against authority, whether it was a teacher or a parent or perceived authority, etc. I gotta be free. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me how to live my life. I'm going to do things my way. I understand what the consequences are. I don't care. I'm doing it my fucking way. And I've been really leaning into that more and more these last few years as I learn to become my authentic and true self. As I dive deeper within and love and respect and honor who I truly am, my personality, right? Like my consciousness, my soul. Um, this is just a guy that wants to be free. And so part of this process for me has especially the last few years has been just radically becoming more and more free in my life, and that means freeing myself in these ways that we talk about, the ways that the Buddhists talk about, the way that the Egyptians talk about, the way that the ancient Greeks talk about, the way that the Mesopotamians talk about, the way that they all talk about. And it's one thing to say like, yeah, that'd be great, I want to be free. Um, but I started applying it all in my life. Like, it didn't happen overnight. I didn't do all the things all at once. It was just a lot of baby steps, a lot of tears, a lot of frustration, a lot of suffering, right? But I started realizing that as I listened to these quote unquote truths, that resonate with me, this ancient wisdom that we're talking about, when I started applying it to my life, it started working. If it didn't work, I wouldn't do it, and I wouldn't even be talking about it. I would tell you guys, this is a joke. This is a load of crap. This is a waste of time. Don't do it. 1-star review. But as it turns out, as I start applying these things into my life, um, it starts working slowly but surely, right? One way or another. Once I start dedicating myself to it, once I start practicing it, everything's a practice. I'm real terrible at the things that I'm new at, usually. Unless it's darts, guys. I'm a natural wizard at darts. I don't know. I don't know how to say that humbly, but Hal wanted you to know that I'm real good at darts, guys. But I'm just saying that, like, when you start these things, don't beat yourself up, as I did. That, like, it's just all a practice. It's all a practice, right? Letting go of your desires and attachments. Holy shit. It takes time, a lot of time. And I don't claim to be there yet, right? But I started putting myself into positions where I wasn't afraid of suffering. Because the truth is, I was terrified of suffering. I didn't want to feel uncomfortability. I didn't want to do things that I thought were hard, right? The stuff I didn't want to look at in the dark shadows of recesses of who I am. And so I had to slowly realize first for me, I had to realize how many attachments I had because I had never thought about it. And if somebody had said to me like, "Hey, you've got a lot of attachments," I'd say, "Oh yeah, fuck you." Mind your business. But upon further reflection, upon a lot of meditation and perhaps some marijuana to help me along the way, I came to see that, okay, fine, yes, fine. You got me. I have a lot of attachments. Okay, fine. I admit it. I admit it to myself, but I don't want to admit it to other people because that's embarrassing. But now I've got myself to a place where I can talk about it here. So, hi. I had a lot of attachments. Attachments to outcomes, attachments to how I wanted things to be in my life or not be in my life, wanting things in my reality to be different. That's what we're talking about here, right? Like, oh, I wish I had something I don't have. Wish I had a different job. Wish I had this relationship. Wish I had this house or this car or this situation or scenario. Wish my life was different than it is right now. That led to a lot of suffering. And I didn't realize it until I started looking at it. And I was like, oh, shit. Okay. Okay. This is going to be a real mother effort to, to deal with, but I'm going to roll up my sleeves and we're going to go to work. So I had to start getting myself to a place of not wanting my reality to be different. And that's called acceptance, which is again part of this Eastern philosophy, right? Of just accepting what is. Because I started finding that as I started practicing accepting what is, I was the amount of suffering was being reduced in my mind, in my life, in my reality. And that was crazy. I was like, oh wow. It was like noticeable. I could see it. If it doesn't work right away, I'm like, this sucks. I'm not doing it anymore. But I was like, okay. I am having more moments of serenity, right? They may be fleeting, but I'm getting more of them. They're peppered in a little bit more than they used to be. Right? I'm having less frustration in my life than I used to. Like, okay, I can see it. Yes. I just sort of practice accepting. And as the Buddhists say, and as the wisdom says, this is the path to freedom. And it goes counterintuitive to the programming of our society or our mind or our family or religious system or whatever. There's no blame or victimhood there, but that's just the way that it works, right? And so recognizing and seeing all of your desires and all of your attachments is the first step. Right? I had a lot of attachment to material goods, of course, but also, like, if we're just going to dive deep here, guys, attachment to relationships and people in my life that I really care about. That, like, I don't want them to die. That scares me. That's because I had an attachment to them. And there is no right or wrong. It's not. I'm not trying to sound like a heartless automaton here. Like, you know, having loved ones is wrong. No, but like at the end of the day, it's an attachment. It's an attachment. And once I started unraveling that within my own psyche and stopped attaching myself to, like, realizing that, my loved ones are going to die when they die. It's out of my hands, and that's why it terrifies me, because I'm trying to control it. Right? And the more that I get myself into this frame of mind, I'm reprogramming my mind is what I'm doing. Our mind controls everything. I don't know if you are aware of that yet, but like our mind is literally our reality. Like I hear it. I hear people say it, the ancient wisdom says it, but it's like I got to drill it deep because it's there's a lot of truth to it for me. And so Buddha viewed nirvana as a transition, right? It wasn't like a release or any of that. It was just, I mean, it was, of course, but like in a broader sense, it was viewed as a transition from one realm to the next. Nirvana translates to meaning to extinguish or to blow out, like a candle, right? Extinguishing of a fire. So, like metaphorically extinguishing these fires of greed and hatred and jealousy and blah 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 blah, all these fires in our life, right? Of finally extinguishing them, being the spiritual firefighter in your own life, right? Like I realized I had all of these wildfires in my life. Some of them were wild, real big, seemingly untamable. But let me tell you, they're all tameable. Hal, the voice in my head, wants to tell me that I can't tame all those fires, but he's a liar. He's a trickster. He's the opponent, the Satan, the Satan. All these words are all connected. And so it's about extinguishing this experience, right? And moving on to the next thing. I kind of like that idea of just sort of like seamlessly transitioning into the next world, right? That's nirvana. And so I'm super into this path of freedom, super into this. I'm on team liberation, right? So let's move on to the fourth noble path, the final one. Let's go through them again just quickly as a reminder. The first one was just saying, hey, there's a lot of suffering, heads up. Number two is here are the causes and origins of suffering, the thirst, the craving. Number three, here's the good news though, it's possible to stop this suffering. And the fourth noble truth, the final one, is here's how you do it. We've explained what it is, where it came from, and now, grand finale, drum roll please, how do I fucking get off this wheel? I'm nauseous. I'm exhausted. Get me off this fucking crazy ride. Right? It reminds me of the Jetsons. Well, you know it. Here is the way to end suffering in your life. The Buddhists lay it out. It's an eightfold path. You can think of them as just practices that can get you off the wheel. I'm going to run through them quickly, all eight of them, and then I'll just break them down quickly, okay? And then we'll wrap it up. So Buddha says you have to have the right view, the right intention, the right speech, the right action, the right livelihood, the right effort, the right mindfulness, and the right concentration. So the first one is Buddhist says that the path to end suffering is to have the right view. What that means, essentially, this is my translation of it in a simple, easy way. This is how my brain works. Having the right view is basically having the eyes to see the true nature of reality. Everything is an illusion. Everything is impermanent. And everything is all connected. And having the eyes to see. This is the right view. Okay. The next one is the right intention. And that one is self-explanatory. It's just cultivating wholesome, quote unquote, good intentions towards yourself and fellow man and woe man and nature and earth and the cosmos and all the things, right? Just having a good intention, having a good heart. The next one is having right speech, which is just, say kind words. No gossiping, no lying, no manipulation. Kind and right speech. And that's not just to other people, but also kind speech to oneself. My whole adult life until the last few years, I had not been using right and loving speech towards myself. I often listened to Hal, and Hal would always tell me that I was not good enough, or too fat, or not smart enough, or any of these long lists of lies. And I started to believe them. And then I started to repeat them back to myself, like you are a piece of shit. You can't do anything right. You are worthless. Nobody loves you. That's not very kind, is it? So I stopped saying those things to myself. It took a lot of practice. It wasn't easy, but now it's just the way things are. I don't talk like that anymore because I practiced. The next one is right action, meaning don't hurt anyone. Right? Don't take actions that hurt people. You know, just saying mean things to people or physically hurting somebody. Um, don't hurt anybody. The next one is having a right livelihood. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Are there jobs that are right and holy and other ones that are, sending you to the dark place? It turns out there are. What Buddha meant by having a right livelihood was having an ethical job that doesn't harm other people, right? And the first thing that popped in my head was, for example, big pharma, right? There's a lot of death on their hands, or certain governmental jobs, or certain, governmental agencies that are off the books, right? Having these jobs that kill people, or hurt people, or harm people intentionally for profit, or for power and control. The Buddha says, no, 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 don't do that, or you're going to be coming back again. You've got a lesson to learn. Get your heart right. The next one is right effort, meaning to try your best, to always try to put your best foot forward, and to have persistent effort towards gaining balance in your life, towards balancing your habits, things that no longer serve you, cultivating just sort of these positive qualities in your life, reprogramming the way you think and talk to yourself and to others, just putting forth an effort, right? Oftentimes, Hal, the voice in our heads, will tell us that we're not doing a good job, or you're not doing enough, or you're doing it wrong, or all of that nonsense. And so it's just about, little bit every day. Some days it'll be a lot bit, some days it'll be a little bit, some days it'll be harder than others, but at least you put in an effort today. Good for you. I have to remind myself, good for you. Gold star, buddy. Like, the voice in your head's trying to tell you you only did a little bit. That's fine. It's better than nothing. You did a great job today, right? You did a great job practicing not beating yourself up. You did a great job remaining a little bit more present today. You did a great job not being fearful of the future today. Good job. Fuck, it's hard. Good job, dude. Good effort. The next one is right in mindfulness, which again is pretty self explanatory. Just staying in the moment, having an awareness of the now. And the key to that is with non judgmental awareness of it. How often I found myself judging these thoughts, these moments, where I'm at, like I'm not where I'm supposed to be, these sorts of things, right? Having a non-judgmental awareness of the things that are happening in my life, aka just be the fucking observer. Right? Just observe it and don't judge it. It's like easier said than done, right? Because of the programming. We're programmed to judge everything, primarily ourselves. We judge other people because it's an as within, so without situation that we're judging and hating on ourselves, and it's reflected outward onto other people, and we judge other people. You notice how you judge some people over certain things and not other things, and it's oftentimes the things that you're judging yourself on. Like, it's so crazy, right? When I first realized that, I was like, oh shit, that's pretty profound. I guess I never thought about it that way before, but it's true. So just having non-judgmental awareness was a real game changer for me, and it's a constant practice. It's not like I've figured that whole thing out, right? I'm constantly having to remind myself, sharpen that sword, stay sharp, and remind myself not to judge myself or others, right? It's so easy to judge those idiots in the government, right? Or what those people are doing. I sure do judge those guys. They're bad. Right? I laugh, but this is the reality we're in, right? So constantly practicing that. And the final one is right and concentration in developing a focused mind. And that's primarily done, at least it was, I'll speak for myself, via meditation, right? Practicing and learning to overcome distractions, not just outward and external distractions like the TV or Instagram or whatever, but the inner distraction. When I first started this spiritual journey and started dabbling in meditation, was the first time I realized, holy shit, there's a voice in my head that is talking nonstop, and I didn't realize that. And that's probably why I'm so anxious all the time now that we're talking about it. But I didn't realize that not only is this voice constantly thinking, 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 talking, talking, talking. It's not just that. It's songs from the radio, or what am I having for lunch, or thinking about the nature of the universe, or what that person said to me yesterday, or how this pissed me off, or how I'm scared about this thing that hasn't happened yet that I'm freaking out about. I had very little um, control over it. I was letting it run the show my whole life. I realized suddenly, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And I started down this path of gaining back control of my own freaking mind, not realizing that I had lost control or never even had control. Perhaps, right? Like, holy shit, that's crazy. uh Jesus, take the wheel, but like maybe I need to take the wheel back. Like, I didn't realize that I even had access to this thing, but like once I started seeing it from different perspectives, I was like, oh wow. And once I started practicing training my mind through these practices like meditation, right? Practicing, for me, like I always say, meditation is, for me, the simple definition is just not thinking. Doesn't matter what position your body's in or where you're at or what, just like stop thinking. Good luck. Good luck. But I now know that with practice, it becomes easier, right? And it works wonders. Um, because as the ancients say, this whole reality is our mind, our thoughts, our beliefs. That's what all of this is. I had to realize that the cause of my suffering is me, my own mind and beliefs. If I believe that I'm suffering, then I'm suffering. But the real mind bender for me was like, well, what if I can get myself to a place where I don't view that as suffering, or I don't view this as suffering? That was like, holy shit, that's, wait, what? That sounds like, are we allowed to do that? Like, I've never heard anybody's talk like that before. It was totally new to me to like, I can train my mind to like not let things bother me like they used to. Like, wait, what? And then it works? Like, what? I just want to shout from the rooftops, like, hey guys, listen, like, how did I not know about this my whole life? It's because I wasn't ready for it. I didn't have the eyes to see. I wasn't there yet. I believe we wake up when we wake up. when our soul and the cosmos and the river of life bring us where we're ready to open our eyes. And so a focused mind is so important to me, I realize now, because as I've learned to reprogram the way I view, well, everything, right? Internally and externally, that with a focused mind, I have so much more peace in my life. I have so much more, contentment. I have so much less suffering. It's what we're talking about. I have so much less suffering. It's not to say it disappears permanently, because that ain't gonna happen. Sorry to tell you, none of the ancient wisdom says that you can shake that here in this lifetime. But um, theoretically, this is the path. This is the way out. We talk about when I first started this awakening process, whatever that means. Um, I started thinking I took the red pill and I'm awake now. And oh no, 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 silly Billy, you started awakening. You can see things differently, but I believe this is a infinite situation, a constant unfolding and blossoming of who I am, right? Of discovering these quote unquote truths or laws of the universe. It's so fascinating, and it's really, as I start applying these things to my life, it just honestly, I'm sure you understand my intention. It's not like bragging, like, "Hey, I'm happy a lot." Right? I feel content a lot. It's because I've gotten myself to this place that's initially it felt really cold and robotic and very Vulcan. I just watched one of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies last night. Um, I'm kind of on the fence how I feel about that. I just need to take a sidestep here and talk about Star Trek for a second, guys, and I'll probably lose my train of thought. That's okay. It happens. Just go with me. Big fan of Star Trek, and it's like an alternate timeline with, I kind of just like the old Kirk, but like I do kind of like the J.J. Abrams movies, but I also I like the creativity behind it. I'm kind of torn. Like I like it, but I don't like it. But the first two movies were great. The third one was less than great in my opinion, but like check them out. They're so good. I love a good Spock, love a good Khan, little live long and prosper situation. Okay, that's it. See, that wasn't that bad. Just a little light Star Trek conversation, guys. Um, so as predicted, I don't remember where I was at, but it's oh yeah, it's not from the mountaintop here saying I've figured it all out, but it's just it starts to become more and more obvious when you start digging into all these religions and philosophies, and they're all saying the same dang thing. They're all talking about a flood. They're all talking about beings coming from a divine realm, coming from the heavens and restarting civilization, teaching human beings and creating human beings and showing them how to do agriculture and mathematics and all of the things. They all talk about this stuff. And so I enjoy sharing these things because I enjoy talking about them. They're endlessly fascinating, and my family doesn't like talking about this stuff, and so this is my outlet to talk about things to y'all who love this stuff. But on that note, I'm really manifesting and trying to bring in more like-minded people. Um, to the cult, obviously, guys, because people who enjoy talking about this sort of thing and who are also on a similar inward journey and enjoy having these philosophical and esoteric conversations. And so, in that vein, I'm manifesting having more of these conversations with you guys, having more conversations with interesting people that I find interesting, right? So, I'm working on setting up more interviews with more. I haven't done it yet, but podcast interviews with my friend Kaylin from Instagram, friend of the cult. Thanks for listening. She's great. I love talking to her. We do live. We've done a couple live videos over on Instagram. So check those out if you're interested in Kaylin Electric Self on Instagram. And I've been messaging with just some interesting people that I'm really having a good time talking with. That I want to have these conversations in a more public forum. That's where I really have been enjoying Twitter or X because they have these They call them spaces where you go into. That's where I record the podcast. Actually, is in just one of their spaces, and it's you can catch me live if you happen to. But I record them over on Twitter and then put them on all the platforms. But it's just kind of like an old timey radio show where people just sort of they often have a bunch of listeners and they're talking about UFOs or spirituality, the stuff that I like to talk about, and it's just fun listening. It's like a um, just kind of a what am I trying to say? Like a town hall, town meeting type thing where everybody just kind of voices their opinion and they're always very polite and respectful of other people, which I love hearing. Like people just are like, "Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead." And "Oh, yes, I disagree with you, but I respect your side and your opinion." And I know there's a lot of places on the internet where you just don't find that nowadays, and so it's really refreshing to just hear people respectfully talking to each other and exploring different ideas and philosophies, and saying, I'm not going to hate you because you disagree with me. I'm not going to hate you because you have a different view of what God is or how the universe works or reincarnation or aliens or whatever, whatever. I know it seems like we're in a really dark place, and I think that in many ways it's because we are, but it's because we're supposed to be right now. That's everything is exactly how it's supposed to be, but we're heading out of it. I feel like we're heading into a really a new golden era, a golden age, as predicted by the ancients and by the cycles and the yugas. That we're slowly breaking out from these paradigms that we've been in as a society, as a civilization, well, since the flood at least, right? Which FYI, I believe happened about 12,000 years ago. There's a lot of evidence for that, but just these things that are kind of hardwired into us. And so it does become like a challenge, a game to sort of like reprogram um, our nature, who we thought we were, right? I just love this game. I just feel like it's a puzzle, and um, I really love listening to real nerdy scientific, quantum mechanics, just the stuff that's often over my head, right? Michio Kaku, I was listening to something about him. Met Michio Kaku in Las Vegas years ago, by the way, and that was pretty cool talking to him. But that was before I was quote unquote awake, and so I didn't grill him like I would now. Like if I saw him nowadays, I'd be like, hey, can I need to. We need to have a chat. I got some questions, bud. Uh, but that's what I'm talking about. Is I want to have these conversations on the podcast, and so I believe that this is where it starts. I'm just doing it and getting the wheels in motion. That's how I believe things work and operate in this crazy, crazy matrix of ours. And so I believe that once I signal to the universe that I'm open to have these conversations, that someday I will have a conversation with Michio Kaku. I'm speaking it into being, right? I believe that's possible. Joe Rogan's on that list. Him and I are definitely going to have a conversation at some point, and it's just not here today. And that's what everything is all working harmoniously, right? Things that I'm like, oh, it's not here today. What's taking so long? Or am I doing it wrong? Or what do I need to do more of this or more of that? The thing I tell myself nowadays is I am harmonious with the all that is. And I just keep repeating it until I believe it, until I shut off the voice in my head that's telling me that I'm not harmonious, that I'm doing it wrong, that I'm blah, 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 blah. No, 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 no. I am harmonious with the all that is. I am exactly where I need to be, where the universe wants me. Everything is primo. Primo. I have nothing to worry about. I have nothing to fear. And I've gotten myself to a place where I actually believe those words, right? There was definitely a time when I first started saying those things where I was like, I definitely don't believe that, but I guess I'm going to just fake it till I make it. I'm just going to say it till I start believing it, right? Because I did not believe those things when I first started this journey. I always say everything always works out. I definitely did not believe that when I first started this journey, but I had to test it for myself. Like, well, does it always work out? Like, let's see. And I got out my spiritual magnifying glass and I started analyzing everything in my life, all of the trials and tribulations, all the times that I thought, like, it's not going to work out. And then guess what? Surprise, spoiler alert, it worked out. But I had to analyze my own life. And I'm not suggesting you do or don't or whatever, but this is just what I did. And I found it very insightful because it helped me to realize, like, okay, I've given it a lot of thought, I've sat upon it, I've meditated upon it, I've talked to the universe, I've spoken to God. I said, like, what's the deal here? Does it always work out? And then God said, like, hey, if you want me to show you, I can. And I'm like, oh, what do you mean? What are we talking here? And God's like, it's a surprise. And I'm like, I don't like how you're smiling. Why are you smiling like that? And God's like, do you want to see it? And I'm like, I don't like where this is going. And so God would often give me these things in my life that would panic me and freak me out on purpose, right? It's all lovingly done, even though I couldn't see it from that perspective as I'm going through the fire, as I'm panicking and freaking out. But as I'm panicking and freaking out, God is constantly saying, calm down, calm down. I'm here. So, like, what are you worried about? Like, don't worry about it. Like, I got your back here. So, take a breath, and I'm going to prove to you that it works out. And then for hours or days or weeks or months or however long it takes for whatever it is I'm going through, the whole time I'm screaming and freaking out and kicking and screaming is what I should say. I just walk through the woods screaming at the top of my lungs to get my aggression out. No, I don't do that, guys. I walk in stealth ninja mode, and I often walk up on coyotes and stuff because they don't hear me coming. I feel like I would have been a really good Native American in moccasins. This might be offensive to some people, guys, but that's okay. You know my intentions. I always thought, like, you know how they'd walk around in moccasins and like ultra quiet and bow and arrow. I don't know why I have to be a Native American to shoot a bow and arrow. So let's just say, like, I wish I had moccasins is what I'm getting at, guys. I think I could be in full stealth mode. And maybe I want to start taking a shooting with the bow and arrow, but that's another conversation. um, well, now I'm lost, guys. Now I'm completely lost in what I was talking about. Um, well, it was meant to be, I suppose. Um, but what just popped into my head, since we're just going wherever it goes, isn't it weird that you had to hunt for your food back in the day? Like, we just shop at grocery stores, and modern Americans specifically, most of us don't know, myself included. I'm raising my hand. Is like, I don't know where that cow came from. I don't know where that meat was raised, or like, we don't touch it. It's so weird, right? Super weird that there's actually a really good chance, based on, well, just history and the evidence, that there's a real good chance that we may be knocked back technologically one way or another, whether it's something solar or interdimensional or an asteroid or a volcano or solar flare, like, all long list of things that can knock us back to the Stone Age, floods, like, lot of fun scenarios, right? um, so it might be interesting. I know that a lot of us, myself included, have a just sort of a yearning to go back to those days of just being more connected to nature, more connected to what we eat and what we grow and what we put into our bodies. And it sounds romantic, right? Until you actually have to hunt for your own dinner, which I've personally never had to do, but I would like to do it sometime. I was always very anti-gun and anti-hunting, and I grew up in a kind of a liberal area, and my parents weren't gun people and or hunters or any of that, and so it's just sort of how I was raised. Right? No, it's not right or wrong, but definitely anti-gun for a long time until recently, and sort of the reason is because I like to hear people's perspectives, right? And I started listening to hunters explain why they hunt and their process, and how many of them are respectful of the animal, and of it giving up its life in order to sustain us. Again, a very Native American sort of sentiment of just sort of connecting again, like the natives across the world, right? It just, there used to be this connection to the earth that many of the modern civilization has lost, right? That's what we're talking about. So I started listening to a hunter's perspective, and it really opened my eyes. Um, I was lis- I was trying to figure out his name, but I can't remember it. But Joe Rogan talks like it all the time about hunting, and just like, they eat the meat. It's not like they just. I don't know what I pictured in my past. I just thought that people just went out there with rifles and were just sort of cruelly hunting and just like shooting these animals willy nilly just for the thrill of killing an elk. Like, oh, I got one. Ha! I'm gonna put it on my wall. And I was always like, gross. That's gross. Um, and are there people like that out there that just do it for the thrill, or you know, the African safaris where they just, you know, the animals are kind of cruelly perhaps put out there. You know, it's like shooting fish in a pond, right? Just like blam blam blam, elephant elephant. Um, so you know, I got some issues with that, I suppose, but yeah, I think it's interesting because I think a lot about like what would it look like if our entire electrical grid went down, which is highly likely. In case you haven't looked into it, it's very, very, very likely to happen at some point. Um, I don't want to be too doom and gloom, but these are the things I think about. I listen to a lot of podcasts that used to have me in a place of fear, real scared. I got into real doomsday scenario frame of mind, and it kept me up at night. And um, you know, thinking the end is nigh, which it might be, but I was real scared about it. Uh, but I'm at a more peaceful place now, just knowing that everything is exactly as it should be. I'm always taken care of. Everything always works out, and so it puts me more at ease knowing these things. But I realized that I had a lot of attachments, mostly to money, right? Like if the economy goes tits up, guys, there's a moment where I paused there because I've never used the term tits up, and I paused for a second. I was like, do I want to use it? And I was like, yes, I do, and I'm I'm glad I did, guys. If the economy goes tits up, guys, it's kind of trashy. It's like something you would hear at like a tavern, like somebody kind of drunkenly saying, "Ah, and then she went tits up," you know. So it sounds kind of trashy, and I'm into it. I've got a trashy vibe going, guys. So I feel like when the economy goes tits up, when you know, because nothing lasts forever. In case you weren't aware of that either. Um, you know, all governments come and go. That's just not a threat, of course. I know people can misread things, but it's just like, you know, nothing lasts forever. All empires crumble eventually. And so when your government, fill in the blank, crumbles inevitably, or you know has significant change or revolution. I was just talking to somebody about Napoleon. I'm very excited to watch that Napoleon movie that's out with Joaquin Phoenix. Like, love that guy. Um, so intense, but amazing actor, of course. But I was thinking about the you know the French Revolution and Marie Antoinette and just these cycles that happen in the world. There's this theory called the fourth turning, I think, where roughly every 80 years we go through these cycles of just sort of, uh, you know, revolution, reinventing the way we, as a society or as a country or as a people or whatever, um, just sort of are, right? And so we go through these cycles, and I feel like we are, um, one of these cycles is turning for sure where we're at now. Just the craziness, but I kind of feel like it might be a good thing, right? We're adjust. We're humans are malleable, even though you know it's difficult and challenging and involves suffering, um, losing power potentially indefinitely, right? And having to go back to a different society, and it wouldn't knock us back to the Stone Age. It would be difficult. It would cause a lot of chaos, especially in the big cities, right? But eventually things would settle down, and you know we have agriculture, we have horses, we have ways to get around. um, I think we could make do and sort of maybe rebuild society in a new way that wasn't so reliant, perhaps, on these technologies, right? Relying on ourselves rather than relying on things in the external, relying on our own ability to grow our own food or whatever, or our own ability to um, just function in society. I mean, we think we can't go without a screen for more than a day or a week or whatever, but of course we can. And it'd be such a breath of fresh air. Um, so, anyways, rant over. Um, I really enjoy having these conversations. I'm interested in watching more videos and unfolding and uncovering more things about the Four Noble Truths and Buddhism. I just love seeing all these you know these truths just repeated over and over again for us to these little nuggets for us to pick up and um, apply to our lives if we want freedom. So cheers to freedom, cheers to liberation, cheers to Nirvana. Cheers to you. Love you. End transmission.